More than a century ago, the largest ship in the world vanished into the Atlantic. For decades, people assumed one thing: someday, we would bring it back. But here's the truth. The Titanic is still sitting on the ocean floor, and it may never come up again. Not because we can't find it, but because the moment we touch it, it starts falling apart. So what's really down there? Why has no country, no company, no billionaire ever successfully raised it? And why does every serious expert say the same thing? Leave it where it is. To understand that, we have to go back to the night it disappeared. In 1912, the Arms Titanic, built by Harland and Wolff for the White Star Line, was considered the most advanced ship ever created. It was called unsinkable, not because it couldn't take damage, but because engineers believed it was divided into watertight compartments that could survive disaster. That confidence didn't last long. On its maiden voyage, the ship struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic, and within hours it sank. More than 1,500 lives were lost, and the wreck disappeared into the deep ocean. For over 70 years, it remained lost. Until 1985, when it was finally discovered resting nearly 3,800 meters below the surface, split in two, silent, frozen in time. But that discovery created a new question. If we can find it, why can't we bring it back? At first, the idea seemed simple. Raise the ship, restore history, build a museum piece worth billions. But the ocean had already started doing something unexpected. It wasn't preserving the Titanic, it was eating it. At the depth where the Titanic rests, the environment is extreme. There is no sunlight, temperatures are near freezing, pressure is crushing, and salt water is relentless. Over time, the ship has been slowly consumed by a process called rusticles. These are formations of iron-eating bacteria that literally digest metal. They grow like icicles made of corrosion, eating the ship from the inside out. What looks like solid steel on the outside is often hollow underneath, weakened, fragile, collapsing under its own history. Now imagine trying to lift that structure, a ship that has been underwater for over 100 years. A ship no longer structurally intact. A ship that might not survive being touched. Because here's the key problem. The Titanic is not just deep underwater. It is structurally decaying in real time. Every year it becomes weaker. Every year it loses more integrity. So the idea of raising it starts to collapse under physics alone. But that's only part of the problem. Because even if we solve the structural issue, there is another force at play that makes recovery nearly impossible. The ocean itself. The Titanic rests in a part of the Atlantic that is unpredictable and remote. Storms are common, weather shifts quickly, and currents at depth are slow, but powerful over time. But the biggest challenge isn't weather on the surface, it's pressure. At nearly 4,000 meters deep, the pressure is so intense that any modern equipment must be specially reinforced just to survive. Submersibles used for exploration, like those operated by deep-sea research teams, are built like armored capsules. Even then, missions are limited in time and risk. Now imagine scaling that challenge up, not just observing the Titanic, but physically attaching lifting systems to it. Any attempt to raise it would require cables strong enough to hold thousands of tons, pressure-resistant lifting frames, and a structure capable of distributing force evenly across a ship that is already collapsing. Because if you lift it wrong, the ship won't rise. It will break apart. And that is exactly what experts fear most. Not failure to lift, but destruction during lifting. But there's still another layer to this story, because even if we somehow lifted the Titanic intact, something even more important would be lost forever. The Titanic is not just a shipwreck. It is an underwater archaeological site, a preserved snapshot of 1912. And disturbing it would mean losing historical evidence forever. The moment the wreck is exposed to air and movement, corrosion accelerates rapidly. Metal that survived underwater for a century would begin breaking down in days or weeks. Structures would collapse. Artifacts would disintegrate. Even the famous bow and stern sections, already weakened, could be destroyed in the process of lifting. There is also the ethical question. The site is considered a grave. Over 1,500 people remain associated with the wreck. That alone has led many governments and researchers to argue it should not be disturbed. Instead, modern exploration focuses on non-invasive methods. Deep sea cameras, 3D mapping, remote submersibles that document without touching. Companies like RM's Titanic Inc. lead many of these preservation efforts, focusing on recovery of small artifacts rather than the ship itself. The goal has shifted, not recovery, but preservation through observation. And here's what makes the Titanic different from almost every other wreck in history. It is slowly disappearing. Not all at once, but piece by piece, even without human interference. Bacteria, salt, pressure, time, they are doing what no salvage operation can reverse, turning history back into the ocean. The Titanic cannot be raised for one simple reason. It is no longer a ship in the traditional sense. It is a fragile structure held together by deep sea conditions that no longer exist above water. What remains is a balance between preservation and destruction, and disturbing it might erase more history than it saves. So it stays where it is, 3,800 meters below the surface. Not as a lost treasure waiting to be recovered, but as a reminder of how even the greatest engineering achievements are still subject to time. And if the Titanic feels impossible to recover, wait until you hear about the shipwreck that vanished without a trace. No debris, no distress signal, no confirmed location. Just a mystery the ocean has kept hidden for decades. But that's a story for next time.